The massive council chamber stretched out like a silver dome against the stars, its walls pulsing with soft blue light that kept rhythm with the nervous heartbeats of dozens of alien species. Chancellor Vextar, a towering figure with skin like polished obsidian and tentacles that moved like liquid mercury, held Earth's membership application in his primary appendage. The document seemed to burn in his grasp. Around the enormous circular table, beings from 43 different worlds fidgeted in their specialized seats. Some had fur that changed colors with emotion, others possessed crystalline bodies that clinked softly when they moved, and a few existed as pure energy contained within shimmering force fields. But despite their vast differences, they all shared one thing right now: fear. The holographic displays flickered to life above each representative's position, showing detailed anatomical scans, behavioral patterns, and evolutionary data from a small blue planet on the galaxy's outer rim, Earth. The images were disturbing enough to make even the most hardened council members uncomfortable. Dr. Krillmoth stepped forward from his observation post. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with four independently moving eyes and skin that rippled like water, he was widely considered the galaxy's leading expert on predator species classification. His specialty was identifying dangerous civilizations before they could spread their violence across peaceful star systems. He had never been wrong in his assessments. Not once in 300 years. "Honored council members," Krillmoth began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute scientific authority. "The biological evidence before you represents the most dangerous species we have ever encountered seeking membership in our galactic community." He gestured to the first set of images, showing detailed scans of human skulls and eye placement. "Observe the forward-facing eyes. This is not the eye arrangement of prey animals or peaceful herbivores. These are the eyes of hunters. Specifically, pursuit predators who track their quarry across vast distances. The binocular vision allows for precise depth perception necessary for striking moving targets." A collective shudder ran through the assembly. The Velnari representative, a delicate being resembling a cross between a deer and a crystal formation, actually whimpered at the implications. Krillmoth continued his analysis, pulling up dental records that made several council members cover their visual organs. Their teeth tell an even more disturbing story. Notice the sharp canines for tearing flesh, combined with flat molars for grinding plant matter. This dental arrangement indicates omnivorous consumption patterns. They hunt other creatures for sustenance, but they're adaptable enough to survive on vegetation when prey becomes scarce. This suggests a species that has faced resource competition and emerged victorious through superior hunting techniques. The Peaceful Union representative, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Harmony Seeker of Calm, pulsed with anxious bioluminescence. In their culture, even discussing predation was considered deeply disturbing. Surely there must be some mistake? Perhaps these humans evolved beyond their primitive hunting instincts. Dr. Krillmoth's expression darkened further as he displayed cardiovascular and muscular system analyses. Unfortunately, the evidence suggests the opposite. Their cardiovascular system is perhaps the most terrifying aspect of their biology. Examine these readings: enlarged heart chambers, dense capillary networks in the legs, and lung capacity that exceeds most galactic species by significant margins. He paused to let the implications sink in before delivering his most chilling assessment. "Council members, this is the cardiovascular system of persistence hunters. These creatures literally run their prey to death. They may not be the fastest species in short bursts, but they can maintain pursuit for hours, possibly days, until their target collapses from exhaustion. Imagine being hunted by something that never stops, never tires, never gives up the chase." Chancellor Vextar's tentacles had gone completely rigid with stress, a biological response a species exhibited only in life-threatening situations. "Dr. Krillmoth, what is your official classification?" The xenobiologist's four eyes fixed on different sections of the assembly as he pronounced what sounded like a death sentence. "Category 5 apex predators, Chancellor. The highest and most dangerous classification in our system." The chamber erupted in alarmed chittering, whistling, and various other sounds of distress. Category 5 predators were legendary nightmares. Species so ruthlessly efficient at killing that they typically destroyed their own ecosystems before developing space travel. In the rare cases where they did reach the stars, They left trails of conquered worlds and extinct civilizations behind them. Representative Gorthax from the Warrior Caste worlds, themselves no strangers to violence, spoke with genuine concern. Chancellor, in our military history, we have records of only 3 Category 5 species ever developing interstellar capability. All 3 required complete galactic intervention to contain. 2 were eventually driven to extinction to preserve other civilizations. The 3rd case needed no explanation. The Devourers had consumed 17 inhabited systems before the combined might of the entire galaxy finally stopped them. Even now, 2,000 years later, those sectors remain quarantined dead zones. Dr. Krillmoff nodded grimly. The parallels are undeniable. Humans show every biological marker we associate with species that achieve dominance through systematic elimination of competition. Their homeworld's fossil record confirms this. They are the sole surviving intelligent species on Earth. Every other potential competitor was hunted to extinction. Chancellor Vextar struggled to maintain composure as the weight of decision pressed down upon him. The peaceful civilization he had spent his life protecting now faced a potential threat unlike any they had encountered. Your recommendation, Doctor? Immediate implementation of containment protocols. Deploy our quarantine fleet to establish a perimeter around their solar system. Under no circumstances should these creatures be allowed to leave their planet. Furthermore, I recommend permanent rejection of their membership application. The risk to galactic civilization is simply too great. The vote proceeded with mechanical efficiency despite the emotional turmoil in the chamber. 43 voices spoke in unison. Unanimous agreement to contain Earth and its terrifying inhabitants. As the session concluded, none of the council members could have imagined how wrong they were about to be proven. Ambassador Tetare pressed her crystalline back against the cold metal wall of the transport shuttle, her entire body trembling with fear she couldn't control. Through the small porthole, she could see the human space station growing larger, a gleaming structure that somehow managed to look both advanced and welcoming at the same time. The contradiction made no sense to her scientific mind. 3 days had passed since the Council's unanimous vote to contain Earth, but protocol demanded they attempt formal diplomatic contact before implementing full quarantine measures. Someone had to deliver the rejection notice in person, and as the youngest member of the Velnari Diplomatic Corps, Tathare had volunteered. Her species valued sacrifice for the greater good, even when that sacrifice meant certain death. Her homeworld of Velenar was a paradise of crystal forests and singing winds, where people spent their days creating art from living light and composing symphonies that could heal broken hearts. Violence was so foreign to their nature that they didn't even have words for concepts like murder or war. The thought of facing a Category 5 predator made every fiber of her crystalline being want to shatter into a million pieces. The shuttle's pilot, a nervous being from the Tech Guild, announced their arrival with a voice that cracked with terror. Ambassador, we've received docking clearance from the humans. Their space station is called. He paused, checking his instruments twice. Harmony Station? Tathare's translator device buzzed with confusion, cycling through thousands of galactic languages trying to find an equivalent concept. Harmony meant peace, cooperation, working together in perfect balance. It was a word that belonged in the vocabulary of gentle civilizations, not bloodthirsty apex predators. That can't be right, she whispered, more to herself than to the pilot. Run the translation again. I've checked it 17 times, Ambassador. They're calling a Harmony Station. As the shuttle docked with mechanical precision, Tathare forced herself to stand on legs that felt like liquid crystal. She had prepared for this moment by studying every known encounter with Category 5 species. She expected to face snarling beasts, demands for tribute, threats of violence, and displays of dominance. Her species' diplomatic training had taught her to appear submissive, offer valuable resources, and hope for a quick death if negotiations failed. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, and Tathare's sensitive hearing picked up sounds from the other side. She braced herself for roars, growls, or the clash of weapons. Instead, she heard something that made her question her own senses. Soft music play in the background, the gentle hum of air recycling systems, and what sounded distinctly like laughter. The inner door slid open, and Tathare flinched so hard she nearly fell backward into the shuttle. But instead of the monster she expected, a human male stepped forward with movements that seemed almost deliberately slow and non-threatening. He appeared to be in middle age by human standards, with hair that had turned silver at the temples and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. Most shocking of all, his hands were held out with palms facing upward, a gesture that, in most galactic cultures, indicated peaceful intentions. "Ambassador Tethare," the human said, and his voice carried warmth that seemed impossible from a predator species. "I'm James Mitchell, Earth's diplomatic coordinator. Welcome aboard the Harmony Station." Tethare's translator worked overtime, and she realized the human was speaking slowly and clearly, apparently aware that she might need time to process his words. This consideration from a supposedly savage creature left her speechless. James seemed to notice her distress and took a small step backward, giving her more space. "I hope the journey wasn't too uncomfortable. We've been looking forward to meeting you for weeks. This is humanity's first formal diplomatic contact with the galactic community, and we're honestly a bit nervous about making a good impression." Nervous? The apex predator was nervous about impressing her? Tethare's worldview began to crack like fractured crystal. "The gravity settings in our station have been adjusted to match your homeworld as closely as possible," James continued, genuine concern evident in his voice. "Our science team worked around the clock to get it right. Dr. Williams, she's our xenobiology specialist. She was particularly worried about making sure you'd be comfortable. Can I offer you some refreshments? We've managed to synthesize some vegetation from your homeworld's botanical records. We thought you might appreciate familiar flavors." The ambassador stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what she was experiencing. This predator was apologizing for potentially inadequate accommodations. He was offering her food instead of demanding tribute. He seemed genuinely concerned about her comfort and well-being. Everything she had been taught about Category 5 species suggested this should be impossible. Your quarters are adequate," she finally managed to stammer, falling back on diplomatic training that suddenly seemed completely inadequate for the situation. James's face lit up with what appeared to be genuine relief and pleasure. "That's wonderful to hear. Please, don't hesitate to let me know if anything needs adjustment. We want you to feel at home here. Actually, Linda Thompson, she's our cultural liaison, has been working on a presentation about human society. She's particularly excited to learn about Velnari art forms. We've heard your people create the most beautiful sculptures from living light." As James began leading her through the station's corridors, Tethare found herself walking past walls lined with images that challenged everything she thought she knew about humans. The artwork showed diverse human cultures from across their planet, but instead of depicting conquest and domination, the images celebrated cooperation, creativity, and what appeared to be genuine joy and diversity. One particular image stopped her in her tracks, a photograph of human children of different ethnic backgrounds playing together in what looked like perfect harmony, their faces bright with laughter and friendship. Another showed humans working alongside other Earth species, carefully tending to plants and animals with obvious care and affection. "These images," she said softly, pointing at the displays, "they show cooperation, not dominance." James followed her gaze and smiled. "Of course. That's what makes us human. We're at our best when we're working together, when we're taking care of each other and the world around us." As they continued walking, Tethare began to question everything the Council believed about these supposed monsters. Either humans were the most sophisticated manipulators in galactic history, or the Council had made a terrible mistake in their assessment. The evidence of her own senses was beginning to suggest the latter possibility, no matter how impossible it seemed. Dr. Kethlon sat in his monitoring station aboard the Council's observation ship, staring at holographic displays that showed impossible things. His six-fingered hands trembled as he manipulated the controls, rewinding footage for what felt like the 100th time today. As the Council's most experienced behavioral analyst, he had spent over 2 centuries studying predator species across the galaxy. He thought he understood how dangerous creatures behaved. But humans were breaking every rule he knew about apex predators. The main screen showed a human male named Robert Davies working at something called an animal sanctuary on Earth. Keflon watched in complete bewilderment as the supposed Category 5 predator spent hours caring for injured creatures that served absolutely no purpose to him. These weren't livestock or hunting companions. They were random animals that had been hurt and abandoned. Recording day 14 of human behavioral observation, Keflon spoke into his device, his voice filled with scientific confusion. Subject Robert Davies continues to defy all established predator behavior patterns. Today he spent 3 hours treating a small injured mammal that appears to have no nutritional or strategic value whatsoever. He paused the recording to zoom in on the human's face. What he saw there made his own predatory instincts, inherited from his species' ancient past, recoil in confusion. The human's eyes showed genuine concern, real worry for this tiny creature's well-being. This wasn't the calculated assessment of a predator, deciding whether prey was worth the energy to hunt. This was something else entirely. The subject administered medicine, provided comfort, and Keflon struggled to find scientific words for what he witnessed next. When a small animal died despite treatment, the human displayed unmistakable signs of emotional distress. He wiped moisture from his eyes, what humans call tears, and appeared to experience genuine grief over the loss of a creature that provided him no benefit. The behavioral analyst had to stop recording. In his centuries of study, he had never seen a predator mourn the death of non-useful prey. It violated every evolutionary principle he understood. Predators were supposed to be efficient, calculating, focused on survival advantage. They weren't supposed to waste emotional energy on random creatures. But humans seemed to do this constantly. His files were overflowing with similar observations. Another recording showed 2 human females, Lisa Anderson and Kate Wilson, organized what they called a charity drive for disaster victims on Proxima Colony, a world they had never visited, filled with beings they had never met. The humans collected resources, organized volunteers, and worked tirelessly to help complete strangers who couldn't possibly provide any return benefit. Keflon pulled up the emotional analysis data from that event. The readings were astounding. The humans showed genuine distress when viewing footage of suffering Proximans. Their stress hormones spiked, their heart rates increased, and their brain activity patterns matched those typically seen in beings experiencing personal threat. Except they were safe in their own homes, watching events happening light years away. "This makes no scientific sense," he muttered, switching to another file. Apex predators should be focused on local threats and opportunities. They shouldn't waste cognitive resources on distant problems that don't affect their survival. His colleague, Dr. Zentai, floated over from her own workstation, her gaseous form rippling with agitation. As a member of the Ethereal Council, her species had evolved beyond physical form eons ago, but even she seemed disturbed by the human data. "Keflon, you need to examine my entertainment analysis immediately," she said, her voice carrying through harmonic vibrations. "I've been studying human fictional media, expecting to find glorification of conquest and dominance. Instead, their most popular stories consistently celebrate self-sacrifice and cooperation." She transferred her data to his display, and Keflon found himself looking at thousands of human stories, movies, books, and songs. The patterns were undeniable and completely contrary to everything he expected from a predator species. "Look at this," Zentai continued, highlighting specific examples. Their biggest entertainment successes feature heroes who give up personal advantage to help others. They create fictional alien species and almost always portray themselves as the ones who need to learn and grow from the encounter. In their stories, humans are typically the young, impulsive species that must be taught wisdom by older, more peaceful civilizations. Keflon scrolled through the data, his scientific mind reeling. Human entertainment was filled with stories about protecting the innocent, making personal sacrifices for strangers, and choosing cooperation over conflict. Even more puzzling, their fictional villains were often portrayed as beings who had abandoned empathy and compassion, traits the humans clearly valued above all else. "Here's what really confused me," Zentai added, pulling up another file. "I found thousands of human stories about first contact with alien species. In almost every case, the humans in these stories are portrayed as the primitive, potentially dangerous ones who must prove themselves worthy of joining a peaceful galactic community. They seem to assume that other species will be more advanced and peaceful than they are, The irony wasn't lost on either scientist. Here were humans creating fiction about needing to prove they weren't dangerous to peaceful aliens, while the actual peaceful aliens were terrified of their predatory nature. Kethlon stood up from his workstation, his multiple legs clicking against the metal floor as he paced. None of this fits established behavioral patterns for apex predators. Category 5 species are supposed to be focused on dominance, resource acquisition, and elimination of threats. They should show minimal empathy, especially for unrelated species. That's not even the most confusing part, Zentai replied, shifting her gaseous form into what her species used to indicate deep thought. I've analyzed their child-rearing practices. Human parents consistently teach their offspring to share resources, help those weaker than themselves, and feel guilty about causing harm to others. They're literally programming empathy into their next generation instead of competitive advantage. The two scientists stood in silence, surrounded by mountains of data that challenged everything their civilization believed about predator species. The evidence was overwhelming and impossible to ignore. Humans behave more like the galaxy's most compassionate species than its most dangerous ones. How did apex predators evolve to become the most empathetic beings we've ever encountered? Kethlon finally asked, voicing the question that had been haunting both researchers for weeks. Neither scientist had an answer, but they both knew they needed to find one before the Council made a decision that might be the biggest mistake in galactic history. The Great Council Chamber had never witnessed chaos like this before. Emergency sessions were rare enough, but this one felt different, charged with an energy that made the very air crackle with tension. Chancellor Vextar's tentacles writhed in frustration as he repeatedly struck the ceremonial gong, tried to restore order to a room where 43 different species were all trying to speak at once. Representatives floated, scuttled, and stalked around the chamber, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that would have been beautiful if it weren't so panicked. Bioluminescent beings flashed angry colors, crystalline creatures chimed in distress harmonics, and gaseous entities swirled in agitated patterns that spoke of deep confusion. Order. We must have order, Vextar bellowed, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics until it resonated through every translator device present. Gradually, the chaos subsided as representatives returned to their positions, though the tension remained thick enough to taste. Dr. Krill Moss stood at his observation post, his four eyes blazing with scientific certainty that bordered on religious fervor. His reputation had been built over centuries of accurate predator classification, and he wasn't about to let these impossible human observations destroy everything he'd worked for. Honored council members, he began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. We cannot allow emotional manipulation to cloud our scientific judgment. The biological evidence remains irrefutable and undeniable. These humans possess every anatomical feature of a Category 5 apex predator species. He gestured forcefully at the holographic displays surrounding the chamber, which showed detailed scans of human anatomy. Persistence hunters with forward-facing eyes for tracking prey across vast distances. Binocular vision for precise, striking accuracy. Omnivorous dental structure indicating they consume both plant and animal matter. Their cardiovascular system is designed for endurance hunting, literally running their prey to exhaustion and death. Murmurs of agreement rippled through several sections of the chamber. The biological evidence was indeed overwhelming, and many council members had built their careers trusting in the reliability of such scientific data. But Dr. Kethlon rose from his position, his multiple legs clicking against the metal floor as he moved to address the assembly. As the council's lead behavioral analyst, his voice carried equal scientific weight, and what he had to say would shake the foundation of everything they thought they knew about predator species. Respected colleagues, while Dr. Krillmotha's anatomical analysis is accurate, we cannot ignore behavioral evidence that completely contradicts every prediction our classification system makes about apex predators. His voice grew stronger as he continued. I have personally documented humans risking their own lives to save members of completely unrelated species. They have developed complex ethical frameworks that consistently prioritize the welfare of others over their own personal survival advantage. The chamber erupted in skeptical chittering and whistling. Several representatives called out challenges, demanding proof of such impossible claims. Keflon had anticipated this reaction and activated a series of holographic recordings that filled the air above the assembly. The recordings showed humans in dozens of different situations, rescuing animals from burning buildings, sharing their food with hungry aliens, working without pay to help disaster victims on distant worlds, and countless other acts that defied every evolutionary principle the Council understood about predator behavior. Ambassador Tetare, who had requested special permission to address this emergency session, stepped forward from the observation gallery. Her crystalline form caught the chamber's light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls as she moved, but her voice was steady and clear. Honored Council members, I have lived among these humans for over 2 months now. I have experienced their behavior firsthand, not just observed it from a distance. She paused, gathering courage to challenge some of the galaxy's most powerful beings. A human named Michael Clark spent his personal time teaching me their recreational games, what they call board games and card games. He gained no advantage from this. No resources, no strategic information, no benefit of any kind. When I asked him why he did this, he said it was for fun, for the simple joy of sharing something he enjoyed with a new friend. Representative Gorthax, whose warrior species has spent millennia perfecting the art of reading enemy behavior, slammed his armored fist against his platform. Ambassador Tetare, you're being manipulated. This is sophisticated hunting behavior. They're studying you, learning your weaknesses, preparing for eventual dominance. But Tethare's crystalline form blazed brighter as she found her courage. For what purpose, Representative Gorthax? They have shared their medical technology freely, offered aid to species they've never met, and asked for nothing in return except friendship and cultural exchange. If this is manipulation, it's the most elaborate and pointless manipulation in galactic history. She activated her own recordings, showing daily life aboard the human station. Helen Murphy, their head chef, learned about my dietary requirements and created entirely new recipes to accommodate my biology. She wasn't asked to do this. She wasn't ordered to do this. She did it because, in her words, everyone deserves to enjoy their meals. The recording showed Helen working late into the ship's night cycle, experimenting with combinations of synthesized nutrients and minerals that would be both safe and delicious for Velnari physiology. The human's face showed genuine concentration and care, the expression of someone who took personal pride in making others happy. Dr. Zentai, the ethereal researcher, shimmered into a more solid form to address the assembly. Council members, I believe I may have discovered the answer to this paradox that's dividing us. Her gaseous form rippled with excitement as she began to share her groundbreaking theory. We have been operating under the assumption that apex predator status and empathy are mutually exclusive traits. But what if we've been wrong about how humans became apex predators in the first place? She activated new displays, showing evolutionary timelines and social development patterns. Human evolution required unprecedented levels of cooperation for their predatory success. Pack hunting demanded complex social bonds and the ability to understand and predict the behavior of both prey and fellow hunters. Tool use and tool creation rewarded intelligence and innovation over pure physical violence. They became apex predators not through superior individual dominance, but through superior community cooperation. The chamber fell completely silent as the implications of this theory began to sink in. Zentai continued, her excitement building. Their empathy isn't a contradiction to their predatory nature. It's a direct result of how they evolved to become predators. They had to understand other minds to hunt effectively. They had to trust each other completely to succeed as a group. They had to care for injured pack members to maintain their hunting advantage. The Grand Galactic Assembly Hall stretched out like a vast cathedral of stars, its crystalline dome reaching toward the heavens, while holographic displays showed the home systems of over 200 different species. Never before had so many civilizations gathered in one place, and the energy in the chamber was electric with anticipation. Representatives from across the galaxy had traveled for months to witness what many were calling the most important announcement in galactic history. Chancellor Vextar stood at the central podium, his obsidian skin reflecting the chamber's ambient light as his tentacles moved in the ceremonial patterns of his people. In all his centuries of service to the galactic community, he had never felt the weight of responsibility more heavily than he did in this moment. The decision they were about to announce would reshape the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. Behind him, massive screens displayed the findings that had turned their understanding of apex predators completely upside down. 6 months of intensive research, behavioral analysis, and cultural exchange had produced results that no one could have predicted. The humans, those terrifying Category 5 predators they had been so afraid of, were about to become the galaxy's greatest hope for peace. Fellow beings, Vextar began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber through hundreds of different translation systems. We gather today to address what may be the most significant error in the history of our council. 6 months ago, we made a judgment about humanity based on biological evidence that seemed absolutely clear and undeniable. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives shifted in their specialized seating arrangements. Some floated in containment fields, others rested on crystalline platforms, and a few existed as pure energy contained within shimmering barriers. Despite their vast differences, they all shared the same anticipation about what they were about to hear. Our xenobiologists, led by the groundbreaking research of Dr. Kethlon and Dr. Zentai, have made a discovery that challenges everything we thought we knew about the nature of apex predators. Vextar's tentacles gestured toward the research team, who had spent sleepless months analyzing human behavior and evolutionary patterns. The screens behind him came to life, showing the journey of human evolution in stunning detail. We discovered that humans achieved their position as apex predators not through superior violence or ruthless domination, but through unprecedented levels of cooperation and empathy. They became the dominant species on their world by learning to work together, to understand each other, and to protect the weakest members of their communities. A collective gasp rose from sections of the assembly as the implications began to sink in. Representatives who had spent months in terror of human aggression now found themselves looking at data that showed the complete opposite of what they had expected. These beings we classified as dangerous predators are actually something entirely new in our galactic experience. Vextar continued, his voice growing stronger with conviction. They are predators who chose to become protectors. They are hunters who evolved into healers. Their predatory instincts, refined by millions of years of cooperation, have created beings capable of understanding and empathizing with any form of consciousness they encounter. He gestured toward the human delegation seated in the honored guest section. Ambassador David Harrison sat calmly alongside Dr. Beth Williams and Commander Todd Brooks, their faces showing the quiet dignity that had impressed so many during their months of cultural exchange. The expressions that had once been interpreted as predatory calculation were now recognized as thoughtful consideration and genuine concern for others. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable, Vextar announced, activating displays that showed human behavior across dozens of different scenarios. Humans consistently choose cooperation over conflict, protection over predation, and community welfare over individual advantage. They have demonstrated these values not just in their interactions with us, but in their relationships with every form of life on their own planet. The recording showed humans caring for animals that provided no benefit to them, protecting environments that offered no resources, and dedicating their lives to helping other species thrive. The patterns were so consistent and so contrary to typical predator behavior that many council members had initially refused to believe the evidence. Today, I stand before this assembly not only to propose accepting humanity's membership application, but to offer them something unprecedented in galactic history. Vextar's announcement sent waves of excited chittering and harmonic resonance throughout the chamber. I propose that we create a new position within our galactic structure, galactic mediators and protectors. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives processed this revolutionary proposal. Never before had the Council created a unique role for a single species, but the evidence suggested that humans were uniquely qualified for such a responsibility. The evolutionary path has created the perfect guardians for our galactic community. Vextar explained over the noise. They possess the strength and tactical thinking of apex predators, combined with the empathy and protective instincts that make them natural peacekeepers. They understand both the mind of the hunter and the heart of protector. When the formal vote was called, the result was stunning in its unanimity. 217 different species, representing every major civilization in known space, voted to not only accept humanity into the galactic community, but to entrust them with protecting that community's most vulnerable members. As the session began to wind down, Dr. Keflon approached Ambassador Harrison, his multiple eyes showing the wonder that had characterized his relationship with humans for months. "David, your species continues to amaze us. We spent so much time looking for the monster that we nearly missed the miracle." Harrison's response carried the warmth that had become his trademark during these diplomatic exchanges. "Dr. Keflon, we learned something important a long time ago in our history. The strongest predators aren't the ones who hunt everything they can catch. They're the ones who choose what not to hunt." He looked out across the diverse assembly, where representatives from hundreds of worlds were now celebrating humanity's integration into their community. "We discover that our greatest strength doesn't come from our ability to take life, but from our commitment to preserving and protecting it." The human ambassador's final words would be remembered and quoted across the galaxy for generations to come. A true shepherd doesn't fear the wolf within themselves. They become the wolf that stands guard over the flock. As the assembly dispersed and representatives began their journeys home, each carried with them the knowledge that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The apex predators they had feared would become the guardians they had always needed, and the universe would never be the same again.